Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lexi Leban. I am the Executive Director of the Jewish Film Institute, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to our 8th annual WinterFest and to today's program, the Filmmaker Residency Showcase. I'd like to thank the funders of our Filmmaker in Residency program, the National Endowment for the Arts and the California Arts Council. We're very grateful for this support. JFI has been offering a filmmaker in residency for the past 10 years. And this year, we've been able to open up the residency to a national group of filmmakers. This has been one of the silver linings of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have people, filmmakers joining us today from East and West Coast. And we're really thrilled to introduce to you these filmmakers and their incredible new projects. Also, I wanted to say JFI has been ramping up our filmmaker services programs for the last several years. And in 2020, we launched our completion grants program. So if you're a filmmaker and you're watching today, we've opened up our call for entries for our second round of completion grants. It's on our website at jfi.org. So I hope you'll consider taking a look and applying if it applies. I want to introduce today James Henderson, who will be doing our ASL interpretation today. Thank you, James, for joining us. And let's go ahead and dive in. So, welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for this event. It's JFI's goal that our community of listeners today will become early fans of your projects and will follow you through your residency for the year that you will be with us here at JFI. So today we want to learn a little bit more about your projects, see some clips, and as is true in the online virtual world that we're in today, there may be a few technical hiccups, so I hope you all will be patient with us. So I wanted to start out by just saying I was really impressed by this group of films and really impressed by how many overlapping themes are really present in these films. You're dealing with some really interesting issues that are timely and relevant for today, mental health issues. We've got some films with really strong female characters. We have a lot of personal voice films. And then we have some untold stories, some real gems about Jewish communities that we may not be familiar with or have been underrepresented in the Jewish film space. So I wanted to dive in and get to know some of these projects. So Holden Kepecs has a wonderful new film that he's working on, Star in the Ring. And I thought, Holden, you could kick us off. I think your film really represents an underserved community, and that's Jewish males in sports. But this is a wonderful film about Jews and boxing. So I thought you could introduce yourself and your project, and then we could take a look at your clip.
The idea of Star in the Ring started a long time ago when I realized how many Jews boxed and were so influential in the boxing arena. But it's a part of history that really was never spoken about and cherished the way it is in other ethnicities. And that always made me curious and want to share the information that I learned. Between 1901 and 1939, there was only one year that didn't have a Jewish boxing champion. And there were thousands and thousands of Jews that other Jews should be proud of and that our culture should talk about.
Wonderful. So let's take a look at the clip, the trailer for your film, and let's see a little piece of Star in the Ring.
boxing. It was the province of every ethnic group at the bottom of the social staircase. First the Irish, then the second wave of immigration, the Jews.
Hear someone use boxing and Jews in the same sentence, and odds are you want to chuckle or raise an eyebrow.
Jewish boxer, what has that got to do with Jewish people? They should be studying, becoming doctors, becoming lawyers. What are you talking about? Most people have no idea that there were literally thousands of Jewish boxers.
And yet they are one of the dominant forces that nobody remembers or understands or even goes, huh, in boxing.
During the 1920s and 1930s, almost a third of all professional boxers were Jewish. 20,000 Jews at that time fought for some kind of purse.
And between 1901 and 1939, there were 38 Jewish champions.
Every 4-round preliminary boxer could make more money in one bout than his sweatshop laboring father or mother could earn in a week.
You ask the kid in the Depression, you want to be president of the United States, or do you want to be heavyweight champion of the world? I can tell you right now, they're going to say, oh, I want to be heavyweight champion of the world. I want to be like Jack Dempsey. For Jewish kids, I want to be like Benny Leonard. I want to be like Barney Ross. These were great, great heroes.
Benny Leonard boxed 221 recorded times. When I wrote Boxing's Greatest Fighters, rating them 1 to 100, I made him number 6 of all time.
The editor of Ring Magazine, the Bible for boxing, Matt Fleischer, said that Lou Tendler was the greatest left-handed fighter in the history of boxing. My father was born in 1898.
In 1930s, there was Barney Ross.
Barney is definitely in the top 10 of all time at his weight, maybe top 10 all time as a boxer in general.
Slapsy Maxie Rosenblum, to me, he was the greatest light heavyweight that ever lived.
The people who saw him fight thought that he was a magician in the ring.
The Jewish people always were yearning for a Jewish heavyweight champion. And we thought we had one when Max Baer was heavyweight champion. And he did wear the Jewish star. He wore the Magen David on his trunks.
Well, my father was Max Baer Sr. He was the 13th heavyweight champion of the world.
Over the years, Jews didn't just box.
Managers, trainers, promoters, the boxing world at a given moment were Jewish.
Jews changed and helped to create what we think of as boxing today.
The 16th bare knuckle champion back in the 1790s was Daniel Mendoza.
Mendoza the Jew, he was called. He was considered the father of scientific boxing.
The most famous gymnasium was owned by a Jewish person, Stillman's Gym in New York.
The Ring magazine was started by Nat Fleischer, also a Jew.
Everlast, the biggest manufacturer of sporting goods, started by a Jewish immigrant. If there is any sport that can be described as a, quote, Jewish sport, it is the sport of boxing.
Thank you so much for sharing your trailer. Can you talk a little bit about some of the characters that we see in the trailer, and where are you at in the process of making your film, and what do you hope to be doing during your residency here at JFI?
I'm pretty much done shooting. I'm having issues with my structure and how to make a historic documentary interesting with so much stock footage, visually interesting. So there's 4 major fighters that we're going to focus on, spanning the early 19th century to the 30s, end of the 30s, when Jews sort of left boxing because they found a better way to make a life. Benny Leonard, Barney Ross, Lou Tendler, and Maxie Rosenblum. Their stories are each different but similar in lots of ways, but yet all really, really interesting and have a Jewish theme. I got some really interesting interviews. Lou Tendler, his son, a couple of fantastic authors, and I even have a piece that I'm doing on Max Bear, where I interviewed his son, Max Bear Jr. So that was a lot of fun. I am almost done with the shooting. I'm really having a harder time with my structure, as I'm pretty much doing this on my own, all but shooting. So it's hard when it's one person just looking at it and dealing with it in general. It's nice to have so many eyes and so many other people to give you input and to have my back.
Excellent, thank you. So Rebecca, I want to talk about your project a little bit. You know, you're making a film also, you know, you're making a film about a community that a lot of people don't know a lot about. And I want you to tell us a little bit about Half Freedom and how you got involved in wanting to cover the issue in your film, and tell us a little bit about the project.
So Half Freedom follows the lives of African asylum seekers in Israel, and these are non-Jewish African refugees. Most of them are from countries like Sudan and Eritrea. This is an issue that's really close to my heart because I'm both Black and Jewish, and I first ended up meeting this community on a trip to Israel and Palestine that was an all-Black delegation. We met with a really diverse array of communities that I've been working with since. We met with Mizrahi Jews, like in the Israeli Black Panther movement. We met with, Palestinians in refugee camps. We met with, Ethiopian Israelis, and we also visited Holot Detention Center, which is a major site that my film takes place in. And we met with these incarcerated asylum seekers who were able to leave the physical facility and come meet us in the parking lot. We had a very emotional meeting with them. It was actually the first time a Black group had ever visited them there. And I sort of made a promise that day, this was in 2014, that I would come back and that I would continue to tell their stories, because really so few people, lots of people pay attention to this region. There's a lot of human rights focus, but very few people pay attention to migrants and refugees who are outside of like the Israeli or Palestinian identities that we're used to thinking about. So for me, it was just the start of this relationship, and this film is really itself a continuation of that. Two of the main subjects in this film are people who I met either on that trip or a little bit later on. And, we've been staying in touch ever since. We're close friends. And this is just my attempt to tell the story of the community organizing of this community and the way that they relate to Israelis and Palestinians, because I think that that's also something that we don't hear very much about.
Yeah, can you set up for us what we're about to see in your clip, and then we'll take a look.
Yes, so this clip is in Holot Detention Center. It's with one of our main subjects in the film. His name's Bullets Iyasu. He's an Eritrean dissident who had to flee Eritrea because of his criticisms of the dictator there. And he's talking a little bit about how his incarceration in Holot Detention Center, which was sort of a punishment that was given to him for having crossed the border, which he has a legal right to do. If you're seeking asylum, you're allowed to cross the border. And he sort of speaks to the way that, many Israelis at this time were not familiar with the struggles of African asylum seekers. And he speaks to the way that, the right-wing government officials sort of painted them in a certain way that justified their treatment in Israel.
Okay, let's take a look at the clip.
My name is Bullets Iyasu. I'm 34 years old. I'm from Eritrea. I almost have been in Israel for 5 years and 5 months. Because when I entered to Israel for the first time, I stayed in Sharon 1 month. And I thought that they received me as asylum seeker or as a refugee. But by the end of, after I stayed 5 years, they back to me to the Polo Center. So I feel something bad, but I already received it as it is because I don't have any option because I came from a dictatorial government. I couldn't go back. The only option I have is I should stay in Holland. To live in Holot is just, a man without doing nothing. just the whole day waiting for eating uncooked foods like the rice, like doing nothing. Just the day comes, the night goes, the day comes like this. We don't have anything. I'm not studying. I don't have first degree. I need to continue my education, but I don't have any access to education. But I can say that it's better than my country, being living in Holland, because I know that if I go back to my country, the thing which is going to be over there is capital punishment or the whole life prison. So the whole thing is, I can say that it's better than being in Eritrea, but it's very shameful being here when you compare with other developed countries. But I know that these kind of people, they don't know our problem, because the mass media and some of the official governments, they told them something about the bad things about us. Like they are criminals, they are rapers, they are cancers. Whatever they say, I don't care. But me is me. I'm the one who came from a country which has a dictator, would have more than 10,000 prisoners, and a lot of people that are working for like $10 per month. And we are the people who are, we are treated by fear, not by law, but it's by fear.
Okay, we're back. I'm curious if you could talk about your relationship with some of the people that you met on that trip. I mean, 2014, you've had a deep long-term relationship with these folks, and maybe talk a little bit about how you gained their trust and how you've been able to cover the story over this, quite a long period of time.
So gaining trust was one of the most difficult things about this process. And I think the asylum seeker community has very good reason to be mistrustful of journalists. A lot of times when people would go to Holot to film, they would try and film men, drinking or like not throwing away their trash properly, trying to portray them as sort of degenerate. And so the first barrier was that I had to sort of convince them that I was there to hear their story. And there were a few different ways that I did that. One was just sitting and talking without the camera on for a long time. There's so many things that were amazing interactions that I'll never be able to share other than me relaying them because the camera wasn't there. But that was so necessary just to get folks to feel comfortable opening up when I did have a camera. Another thing is my background as someone who's both Black and Jewish gave me a lot to relate to folks over. I think explaining that my reasoning for doing this was that, I live in the United States. I have family that's, Black American and incarcerated. I have family that are Christian and Muslim, even though I'm Jewish. Really helped me sort of relate to these folks because they, there is solidarity among Black people around the world. And this is already something that sort of exists that folks are looking to. And I know a lot of their movements were inspired by like Black Lives Matter. So for me to be coming from that cultural context also helped me relate to these guys. And also me being Jewish, I think, I was able to, I take personal responsibility in some ways for things that happen in Israel and things that are done in my name as a Jewish person, and saying sort of like, I see what's happening to you and it's wrong and it's against my morals. And I'm going to speak up and use the voice that I have as a Jewish person to say that really helped folks feel that I was on their side and I wasn't there to, try and make them look bad or try and make the government look better. I was just there to be with them and to capture their story as it unfolded in front of me.
Yeah, so, your identity is really key to some of the relationships you've been able to form over time. What are you hoping to work on during the residency this year?
So in this residency, I'm working towards my rough cut of this film. I have what I felt like was 80% of it shot. I was hoping to go back in 2020 to film more, but unfortunately COVID made that impossible. So right now I'm just trying to use what I have to make as strong a film as possible. And then if I'm able to travel back, I'll do that. And if not, I'm hoping at the end of this to raise some funds to hire an editor to bring me to a fine cut and a final cut and get this out in 2022.
Okay, thanks so much. Debra Schaffner, you have a really interesting personal project. And I think, sort of jumping off from Rebecca's project and, your own identity being important, your own voice being important as a filmmaker, you know, you're taking on a really personal project. And what I love, besides the title of your film, Curse of the Mutant Heirloom, is just that you're really looking at using animation and miniatures in telling your story. So could you talk a little bit about the development of this project and your choice of form and format to use in exploring the issues in this very personal film?
Yeah, so yeah, Curse of the Mutant Heirloom. So the curse is the BRCA or BRCA genetic mutation, which basically causes women who have this gene to be at very high risk for breast and ovarian cancer. And it's definitely prevalent in the Ashkenazi Jewish population, but it's present as well as other genetic mutations like that in other races and populations all over. It's not exclusively Jewish at all. In any case, that's the curse. The mutant is me, and also my mother, who gave me this really fabulous gift. And so the story is kind of centered on our strange and estranged relationship, and kind of defying the notion that disease will bring us together. And it kind of also sends me on this quest to understand that distance and her traumatic childhood growing up in Budapest during World War II and the Hungarian Revolution, and you know, epigenetic trauma and fun things like that. And I guess in that process of exploring that, you know, going through archives and kind of trying to understand my mother, I somehow started talking about my mother as being, I think I've always talked about my mother as being robotic. Like my sister used to always say that we were raised by wolves, and I always said, oh, we were raised by robots and television. So after my mother died, I decided I had to make a robot of her. So I started building a miniature robot that I, you know, kind of wired in with a battery, and I actually had someone sculpt her head, and then I said, oh, well, I have to give her a home. Okay, I'll build her a kitchen. So I kind of based it on our childhood kitchen, and took some liberties there. And then that kind of began a way for me to kind of look at her and our relationship. And then that felt so natural to me. Like I've worked in documentary, I've worked as an editor, and, you know, I understand the language of observational filmmaking, but when I started doing miniatures, something just kind of like lit inside me, and it just felt like the way that my brain and aesthetic works. And I was like, oh my God, I have to do more of this. And then animation, I think was always kind of in my head around the project, but it kind of got even stronger. So those kinds of modes of storytelling just really kind of spoke to me in a really deep way. And I realized I had to basically use all of that. So what else? So I'm, it's centered on the story of me and my mother, but I'm also looking at the gift and curse of genetic science, so you get this knowledge that you're gonna, that you have a very high chance of getting these, diseases. What can you do to stop it? And the choice that a lot of women make these days is to have prophylactic surgeries, so mastectomies and hysterectomies and all these ectomies. And it seems like such a gift to like defy cancer, like who does that? And it is. But there's also the flip side of that, where, the medical system is one that's built on a lot of, misogyny and objectification of women's bodies. And So I'm looking at that whole dichotomy through the stories of other women who are dealing with the same situations and in a lot of cases ending up more damaged than they were when they started, and dealing with things like breast implant illness and other cancers. And but I'm trying to use a lot of dark humor, especially with using miniatures and animation to kind of just show the more complex picture, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, what I love so much about this project is it's very personal, but it will also resonate with a larger community of people that are dealing and grappling with these issues. And I love the way that you've blended the personal and the communal. And also just, it sounds really dark and it sounds really, dark, deep, depressing, but the humor and the form that you've chosen really give the project a levity, and I think that opens the door for us to come in. So let's take a look at the trailer, and then we'll be back.
Debra, yeah, she's a female, but she doesn't look too feminine for me, for my needs.
Does having this gene make me more female?
Maybe. I don't know. I guess I didn't give you the right genes. Wow. This is real Fendi.
Is that a family heirloom, Mom?
No, it's not a family heirloom. What do I need to have a family heirloom?
I am a woman from a family of unlucky women. So I watch and wait and watch and wait, and every bruise, bump, and twitch is a gateway to Armageddon. Am I hungry, tired, sad, bloated, lonely, sore, neurotic, or do I have cancer?
These procedures bring an almost magical benefit in the world of mastectomy.
My skin turned black around my freaking nipples.
The epitome of irony. Removing my healthy breasts to not get cancer, only to have implants put in that are known to cause cancer.
It's kind of weird though, cutting off healthy organs to stop yourself from getting cancer. It's kind of strange.
It's normal.
So Mom, this might be the first real conversation we've ever had.
I don't know.
When I was a kid, I feel like you barely talked to me. You were like this person in the kitchen who never played with us.
It's been so many years ago, I can't remember.
Did having these types of cancers change the way you feel about your body?
Not really. Did you have breast surgery too?
Breast Cancer Awareness Month, bitches.
Debra, are you pleased with how your boobs look?
Well, I don't really care how they look at this point, because I'm still in pain.
It'll all be fine.
3 surgeries, right?
2 on Dad
Yeah.
and 1 on Dad.
They know that they are extremely loved, but I think that they see a broken mom.
I want to tell my child everything about who their family is and where they came from.
What do you want me to know about you that you haven't told me before?
I don't really know. I mean, I was born in 1942, so that's about it.
Is this when you became a ghost? If I go to your house, will I find you? Did you drift through the halls, lost in shapes? Did you go numb as your only salvation? Why did you decide to have kids?
Because of my husband. He wanted sons. That's a normal procedure.
The twisted strands of you carry all the holes you grew and the diseases of your phantom mother.
Is that a family heirloom, Mom?
Forget about the heirloom.
Okay. I mean, I love this. I mean, the miniatures kind of, I always think of Todd Haynes, superstar, Karen Carpenter.
Oh my God, I love that movie so much.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm wondering like what your inspirations were for thinking about how to use miniatures, and we only see a little part of the animation, but if you could kind of go into a little more detail about that, I'd be interested to hear about it.
Well, actually, definitely Superstar has been in my mind for a long time, and I'm hoping to get like, in some ways I like the primitiveness of it, you know. In other ways I kind of want to get into like a more polished kind of look, and the stuff that's in the trailer is, you know, stuff that I built by myself with a little bit of help with my mother's head. Yeah, but I want to get, I don't know what else, I don't know what the other inspiration is. I guess I started out working in animation as an editor and sound designer. So I kind of had that kind of lexicon in my head as you know, just like a language to tell a story. So even though I was never working as an animator, I was always very interested in that, in that kind of storytelling. I definitely don't really have the patience for stop motion. So I figured I'll work in miniatures in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
And then
what about the other women that, you know, we see? How did you go about thinking about integrating other people's stories into yours? Because that's a more traditional sort of documentary element. So how are you thinking of those subjects kind of flowing through this very personal film?
Well, I mean, the thing that a lot of women are dealing with who are going through like having this genetic mutation is that it's really hard for anyone who doesn't have it to really understand. You know, and so a lot of Facebook groups have kind of sprung up around this for support and like sharing of information that is not widely accessible within the medical community. So I started out just kind of going to those groups for support, and that's how I started meeting some of these women. And the stories that I was hearing were so different than what I was seeing out there in the world, you know, with like Angelina Jolie or you know, whoever is doing some kind of media campaign, and it was just kind of like these natural conversations that I was having with people that I thought like really needed to kind of be a part of it. And I don't want my personal story to be like totally representative of like the complex situations that women are going through.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like a natural kind of extension of it. And the way I'm treating the stories is you know, some observational, but I'm actually moving a lot more towards animation for those stories, and using that form to kind of take like some creative liberties and portraying, you know, things that women are talking about that, you know, I could really have a really hard time filming even if I had the chance.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested to see how it all unfolds. So thank you so much for sharing the beginnings of this year with us.
Thank you.
I want to stick with sort of the family theme because I always am very interested in, you know, personal family histories and how filmmakers and artists are making sense of those relationships through film. So Andrew Garbus, you're making a really interesting project, Lost and Found, in that vein. And it's very different and has a very different style, look, and feel than what Debra's film is doing. And you have so much family footage in your project. So can you tell us a little bit about what your project is about and how the idea came to you and where you're at with it?
Yeah. So the film is set over the week of the move out of my childhood home. And I used that. The reason for the move out is because my parents have decided to separate after 30 years of marriage. And so I used that family dissolution as an impetus to explore via the medium of cinema how we got to that place. It's not just about their relationship and why their marriage fell apart. It's about the entire family's dynamics. Everyone from me and my brother to the dog, and like everyone's, the way everyone's dynamics essentially. The way I came to the idea was I've always used film, whether I was conscious or not of it, and definitely this film has made me even more conscious of it, I think, than I was growing up. But I've always used it as a way to make sense of the world around me and what's going on in my life. And so with this particular film, I had made 2 short documentaries previously focusing on my grandfather, who was suffering from Alzheimer's at the time. And when I finished my college thesis film, I wanted to right away start making another film, because if I don't have something to make, self-destructive habits happen, and I'm not a very happy person. So I was listening to Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, which I'm not really a huge rap album fan, but something about that particular piece of art really connected with me. And I was like, why does this connect with me? Because I'm not from Compton. My background is anything but from Compton. So like what, and I started to think about it more, and then I thought about, well, what in my life could I create that is relatable? Like what story was going on immediately that I had access to, that I could tell a story that anyone could, or a lot of people could relate to pretty easily, the same way that album connected with me. And the answer came up pretty quickly and pretty obviously. It was my parents' separation, and then from there, just circumstances started to occur. We were moving out of our home, and I knew months ahead. It was just, okay, we're going to use this period of time. We're going to see what happens over the course of this week and make a film about it. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, I want to take a look at it and then discuss it. I think, people will get a better understanding kind of seeing this footage, how we might dive into a deeper conversation about what you're trying to do here. So let's take a look at the clip.
Give Ashley a hug and let me see.
Can you see it? Are you filming?
I am filming.
What movie are you making?
Baby back in a movie. Now give me my camera back.
What's going on right now?
There's furniture being moved, there's boxes being packed, there's stress and tension as we go through the process.
And you talk about part of this movie is not just that we're moving, but the reasons for the move. And the reason for the move is that the family is, in essence and to a degree, breaking up, in the sense that your mother and I are divorced. And did you and Mom still get along back then? Or?
Hi guys!
Get along, yeah.
It seemed like you liked Dad a lot back then. That's who you were talking to.
Yeah, no, Dad and I, we always had problems since way before we got married.
If this had happened, not now, but, years ago, if you will, when you were a little bit younger, do you think it would have affected
what period? Like elementary school? Because elementary school I wasn't having all the issues that I had in middle school and high school.
Do you feel like you got some answers that you were missing?
I've always been curious how much my mental health issues affected the rest of my family.
Oh, look, that's when you and Matt loved each other.
I don't know what happened. I feel really bad about it.
I know how you feel about me, but I do love you. And I've always loved you. And, you have me too. You have me too.
Everything in my head right now, everything's a mess. What's the problem?
Why are you making this?
Why am I making this? Oh, good question.
Why are you taking pictures?
I don't know, just so that you'll have it, to see how the two of you played the clip together.
Okay, so I mean, this is really interesting. Like, you seem to have family footage going back to the very early years of your life. And you know, it seems like actually both you and Debra are doing something similar in trying to make sense of familial relationships, and you're using years and years of family footage. So can you describe like who shot footage in your family, and like what is the volume of this footage that we're actually talking about?
Everyone shot footage in my family, pretty much. Sometimes it's my mom behind the camera, sometimes it's my dad, sometimes it's even me. I didn't even know until I started digitizing this home video that the earliest films I made were me in like 1995, 1996 or something crazy. So, and the film itself is stylized in this idea of like a final family home video, albeit rather than the kid who was growing up shooting the home movies and everything, now we have the cinematographer actually. So there is a bit more of and the nicer cameras too. So it's a bit more of a production value aspect going on to it. How many hours of home video footage do we have? Probably, that's a tricky question to answer actually. But it's probably like 5, 6, anywhere from 5 to 8 hours, I would say, of family home videos that I had to digitize, and we've gone through and we've had to select little bits and pieces to put in. I mean, everyone's documentary is gonna have a huge shooting ratio. And then on top of that, we've got like thousands of archival photos that we've been sorting through. And it's the whole family's life for the most part, besides like one particular period of time, has been documented on camera.
Yeah, and I mean, the clip that we just saw, it has a mystery sense to it. Like there's a feeling of investigation and curiosity. Like, what is this film about? What are you trying to do? Is this filmmaking as a therapeutic process? Can you talk a little bit more about that? And if there are other films that you've seen in this vein that are influencing how you're putting this together?
Oh yeah, 100%. There definitely is an investigative element to it. There's been an investigative element editing it, which the trailer also showcases. So initially, what may have been my intention starting out, the film takes a turn, and I become more a part of the film than I originally intended. And so that within itself was it became, I initially wanted to make an exploration of my parents' separation and just the reasons behind their divorce. And then it became, oh, wow, like how, like I impacted this in some way. This guilt that I had been like holding within for so long started to manifest, on top of which there's the anxieties of just getting moved out of the house successfully and the anxieties of making the film simultaneously while trying to deal with all that. And it became an exploration of that. It became an exploration of me trying to better understand my relationship with my brother, how my parents' relationships with him were impacted, my battle with mental illness. It's just all the different dynamics that make up, a messy family story, and particularly our dysfunctional family. It unintentionally, to a certain extent, dove into all that. And it's just, again, it is an investigation. In terms of the films that have impacted us that we've used as reference, It's been a mix of narratives and a mix of documentaries. So in terms of the doc space, Italian American, Martin Scorsese's Italian American is a huge inspiration, and I think this film wears it on its sleeve to a certain extent. On top of that, Stories We Tell is definitely one, and Capturing the Freedmans has served as one, and Minding the Gap has been a more recent addition, and we're still watching tons and tons of films that continue to inform the edit to this day. In terms of the narrative space, The Squid and the Whale was a huge inspiration, both in terms of the visual work and in terms of the subject matter. And that's all I have off the top of my head right now, but yeah.
That's excellent. I mean, yeah, I mean, this is a rich territory. There's certainly a whole festival that could be put on that focuses on Jewish dysfunctional families. So you're in great company, and you'll be adding to the pantheon of these stories. You know, looking at anxiety and looking at some of the taboo subjects, I think, that Jewish communities aren't so great at talking about in the open. And I think films are ways that you can catalyze those discussions that are sometimes uncomfortable. So I'm really looking forward to how it unfolds. And what I also like is we have these multi-generational approaches, like you and Debra are from different periods with different influences, and yet there are a lot of interesting strands and strains. So I'm interested to see how you guys interact during this residency this year. I want to go to Ken Paul Rosenthal, because I think your film, Julia Vinograd, Between Spirit and Stone, is, it's a powerful film with a powerful female subject. And I think, we're really learning this year and for the past several years that there's so many women's stories that are coming to the screen that, they're subjects that have had great impact in our communities that we haven't been aware of. And I think some of the themes that we've been just talking about are also very present in your film. So can you talk a little bit about this project and tell us how you got involved in making it?
Yeah, Julia Vinograd was a real Jewish eccentric, and we don't have many stories out there about Jewish eccentrics. So she was born in Pasadena, but spent most of her life on the streets of Berkeley, California. And she grew up with polio and a number of other disabilities and thrived in spite of them. She was eccentric because she made she created a persona, a brand that led to her being known as the Bubble Lady of Telegraph Avenue. And she wore a medieval cap with a big gold tassel on the side. And she had this very pronounced limp because of her polio. And she would hawk her books on the streets of Berkeley very, very aggressively and blow her bubbles. Now, why bubbles? Because in 1969, when all of her peers were protesting the People's Park conflicts, she couldn't really participate in the same way because of her physical disabilities. So her protest was a kind of a creative form of resistance by blowing bubbles, and she found she could charm the police that would otherwise shut her down by blowing bubbles. And this became part of her brand, as I said. So she pushed through all her constraints to produce over 70 volumes of poetry. And she was known as a street poet because she documented the lives of voices that were marginalized, indigenous people, the homeless. And she also wrote poems that were very mystical, called The Book of Jerusalem. So the film is going to cover three very specific areas of the course of her life. It's going to cover the People's Park protests. It's also going to cover the Bay Area post-beat poetry scene, which is a really, really important part of Bay Area literature that would have otherwise been forgotten were it not for this film, if I may say. And then lastly, these Book of Jerusalem poems, which have been fascinating me since 1986, when I first arrived in San Francisco and discovered these poems. And in fact, I went to Israel for the second time and lived on a kibbutz for 6 months near Jerusalem to make a film that was just about those poems. What distinguishes these poems is that God and Jerusalem are anthropomorphized. They have voices, and each poem is a dialogue. They're very antagonistic lovers, but there's a very biblical, prophetic, almost mystical sense about these poems, and I was transfixed by them. The project never fully came to fruition, but all these over 30 years later, I'm now going to make a full-fledged feature-length documentary about these poems and Julia's life and the times in which she lived. So they're really the maturation of that dream that was first seeded over 30 years ago.
Wow. And that's super exciting. I mean, one thing that occurs to me as you're talking is, you know, People's Park is in the news today now. And, you know, even though I think from what I know, Julia Vinograd didn't really define herself as a disability rights activist, but she was very present in that community in Berkeley, which I think, you know, now we're seeing new films like Crip Camp that have come out that have really given great color and context to that period of time. So I think this film is going to be very relevant to contemporary issues that we're experiencing.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about Jewishness, Jewish culture, Jewish history in the context of disability, because I think in how we read disability. For example, there was a time when you could look at a Jew and based on their appearance know they were a Jew. And I think historically, Jews have had to be real shapeshifters so they could fit into a particular culture or society and not be oppressed. For Julia is a really interesting case because she didn't identify as being disabled. And in fact, a lot of the people I speak to about her didn't really consider her disabled, yet she had this very pronounced limp from her polio. She had other internalized disabilities, and that really affected the way she could live. I mean, she was an adult who subsisted on SSI for the great bulk of her life. She basically ate one meal a day for most of her life. And if she didn't sell books, she didn't eat. So the film will it won't address disabilities the way my prior work addressed mental health, which were portraits of mental health. This is someone who has a disability, but I think it's going to bring up the question, well, what does it mean to be disabled? How much do we claim that title? Or are we disabled if it's a hidden disability? I think that's a really prescient subject given disabilities in the current landscape, for sure.
And can you talk a little bit about your own relationship to the material? Like what draws you to telling this story? You know, are there themes that resonate for you personally? Is there some personal deep connection between, you know, this work that she created and your own experiences? I mean, something sticking with you for 30 years is kind of rare. And I'm curious about your connection to her life and material.
Well, first and foremost, it's the poetry. And it's not even so much the street poems as these Book in Jerusalem poems in particular. When I first heard these poems, I had a visceral, embodied reaction to them. They gave me chills. And then back in 2018, when she passed away, just a couple days before her memorial, I heard of her passing. So I picked up these poems, having not read them in decades, and read them from cover to cover to my partner who had never heard them. And by the end, I was crying and had that same sense of chills. But as a mid-career artist and a midlife human being, you know, I wasn't making the same film. It wasn't just going to be creating images to these poems. I had to triangulate between the poems, the woman, and the times in which she lived. So over the past 10 years, I've been making these mental health films. And, you know, as a documentor, you can't make a film about a subject unless you feel a profound empathy with whatever the subject of the film is, be it the person or just the theme. And, you know, I have my own mental health challenges, and that's why I became a mental health advocate through my films for so many years. And you can sort of meet and transpose and heal from whatever one struggles with in their life by making a film about someone. You're sort of reaching yourself from the outside in. And so similarly with Julia, I'm just really interested in this idea of having a kind of creative form of resistance, a creative way of not just marching through the streets and yelling, but through your work, creating that kind of creative advocacy, finding healing and wholeness in that way. And also, it's a demonstrative thing too. Through our work as artists, it's not always the work itself and the subject itself, but just the fact that we are doing the work. And she was an example of that. I mean, she really embodied the Jewish philosophy of tikkun olam. She healed the world, not through what she was saying, but that she did what she did. And that subsisted and thrived by doing it in spite of her disabilities.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the woman in action. Let's look at the clip and then we'll come back.
They're poems of re-examination. Why do we keep doing unacceptable things to each other? Who are we really? Where do we go from here? Fuck human-made concepts that separate us.
Julia was acutely aware that each human being has within him the microcosm of the whole of creation, so that nobody's all good or all bad, but that each of us is capable of all the beauty and all the evil that's in the world. So that's why the Jerusalem poems can be all about love and also all about war. Because if you love something, you might do violence for it.
When the world came through her, it changed. Rather than the world changing her, bubbles are not affected by rain, even really strong rain, because like Julia, bubbles are unaffected by the chaos around them. The rain goes right through them.
It's important to understand and honor the legacy of these misfits like Julia Vinograd, because they are the oxygen of our culture. Without them, we'll suffocate under the weight of an orthodox history, and everything new always came from the rebels, and she was one of our best.
Ken, thanks so much for sharing this with us. It strikes me, it's such a different, project for you. Your past work, it feels like this film is going to be, a departure in the sense of really making a feature documentary using elements of poetry, but also, as you said, the context of the times. So I'm really curious to see how it all unrolls.
Well, me too. I mean, the clip we just saw had a lot of text on screen, and for a person who is so omnipresent on the streets, there's very little footage of her out in the world. Little bits and pieces keep cropping up all the time. In fact, KQED just revealed that they have 16mm footage of her in their vaults. So I'm really, really excited to have access to that. But a lot of her presence, her embodiment on the screen will be conveyed through text. I have her typewriter in my possession. So in that clip at the beginning of it, you saw the word Jerusalem typed in her eyebrow. And I actually typed that with her actual typewriter. So there's a way of sort of re-embodying her by returning her to her corpus through her very tools, through her very art itself. Sometimes the text will be meant to be read. Other times it'll just work as a visual device. But, there's also going to be a lot of the conventions of traditional documentary, like on-screen interviews as well. But it's really going to be a collage. It's really going to mix it up. And in that way, it is different than my prior work. I would like to say one more thing, if I may. This is a film about place, too. I'm really, really inspired by the writings of David Abrams, who has these seminal books, Spell of the Sensuous and On Being Animal, where he talks about the animate earth and how when things happened in a physical landscape, they leave a narrative marker there. So that's why in my prior work, I've used landscape as a way to be the stage for stories. And the story was often heard through voiceover. This film is as much a story about Berkeley and Jerusalem, and a Berkeley that once was a crucible for, freaky people who lived on the margins, people who waved their flag as freaks, and Jerusalem, which, historically is a war-torn place, but also a place of transcendence and profound spirituality. So that will be the stage for the Jerusalem poems, just as Berkeley is a stage for the People's Park conflicts and its legacy of nonviolent resistance that, is leaving its imprint on today.
Yeah, I think our audiences will be really excited to see, a local story. So let's move forward. Lauren Greenhall, you have another really amazing female subject that you're looking at in your film Zelda. A very different experience coming from a very different community. We're not in Berkeley, California. So can you locate Zelda and her story and tell us a little bit about your project?
Sure. So my main subject is a woman named Zelda Volkov, who runs a highly sought after wig salon in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. So her salon is frequented by the Orthodox Jewish fashionista. So it's a very unique experience that isn't seen on screen very often, if at all. And it's a character-driven documentary that follows her over the course of 3 years after she goes through a divorce, which is very rare for that community. She starts to question her relationship to God, her relationship to being Hasidic, and therefore her relationship to her wig and what that means for her identity and her future.
Yeah, I mean, she is really seems like a force, and I'm kind of a fashionista convert here. So let's look at the trailer so that people will know what we're talking about. Let's take a look at Zelda.
I have 3 daughters, so my dream for them is for each of them to have their own Zelda hair salon in different cities. And maybe if I have a son, one day he'll have a toupee salon. I live in an ultra-Orthodox community where married women cover their hair. Like, I feel most successful and most accomplished is when a bride comes in looking for a wig and she leaves, with her wig looking exactly the same.
That's the biggest compliment when somebody asks if you're wearing a wig.
Exactly. When someone says like, "Oh, you have a gorgeous wig,"
then
that's
it's like,
not a compliment.
yeah, no, don't tell me my wig is gorgeous. When you make the commitment to keep this because of your religious beliefs, you keep it whether you like it or not, whether it's comfortable or not.
The areas of a woman's body that are sensual and that can stimulate a man, basically, and arouse a man, should be concealed. That's essentially what it comes down to.
I don't want to really focus on like me personally, like taking off my wig, not taking off my wig, like after divorce. Like, I don't know, do we have to like talk? Does it have to be part of it? I feel like there's a shift, and it's not like a spoken shift. I feel like it's just something that kind of is happening. It's definitely changing and adapting as I feel like the younger generation is integrating into society. And if I have to lose everything and everyone in that process, that's still more important to me than my business, than my parents' approval, than anything.
So one thing that really strikes me about this trailer is like, I want to look like and be like these women. I mean, it's very glamorous. And I think the images in this trailer really contrast with what a lot of folks have seen in other filmic representations of Orthodox women. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit before we get into Zelda's story.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the unique challenges of making this film is the moment you say Hasidic, everybody pictures the exact same thing. And it's almost a learning curve to be like, no, there's many types of Hasidic people, but because generally I think there's a lot of lazy producers and they go out and they go, well, I want to tell a Hasidic story, so I should tell it the way Hasidic stories are told, as opposed to looking for all these different subcultures within that world. And so we've had to figure out, well, how do we show that not all wigs look the same, or Hasidic people can be blonde, or what does it mean to have Hasidic people who don't look like, don't have a short black wig and are completely covered head to toe. And so it's been fun to play with that diversity within that community and figure out how to how to tell the story without confusing people at the beginning when they're not used to seeing this.
Yeah, I mean, I love it because you bust through all stereotypical images. And, you know, I think we're getting more complex images of the Orthodox and Haredi communities through shows like Unorthodox, which became huge this year, and Stiesel, which, you know, people are dying for season 3 to, you know, roll out. But this really strikes me, you know, even these images feel really different to me. And so I'm wondering, how did you come across Zelda, and why were you specifically interested in telling her story?
So I used to be like the human interest video reporter for the New York Post. And I did a piece on a different woman who's kind of within that fashionista, glitterati world. And Zelda was just somebody I spoke to as like a woman on the street, you know, 3 minutes. And there was something about her where I was just very drawn to her. And a couple years later, I decided I wanted to do like a short piece on her. And with spending the day with her and getting to know her, what I thought was going to be a very fun slice of life profile turned out to be a lot more meaty. And there was a lot more behind the surface. And I kind of said to her, how would you feel if I just continued to follow you? And this is what I see, and this is what I think this could be. And she said, okay. And so now we're on year 4.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm kind of wondering, it feels like all of you are taking on, you know, larger projects than, you know, what you've been used to before, or maybe you've been editors and then now you're, you know, really taking hold of a project that you really have full ownership of, and, you know, you're moving more in the direction of feature work. I'm just wondering if a few of you can talk about sort of that artistic process and what it feels like to make this kind of a leap, and what artists in general need in terms of a community to pull off work like this, because, you know, these are going to be years long, and some have already been years long projects. So does anybody want to take that on? You can just go. Okay, Andrew, go for it.
Yeah, no, this has definitely been a huge punch in the gut. I did not know what I was getting myself into. The funny story that I tell people is I wanted to have this film done in a year. It's been 4 years and counting. So what makes it like the biggest help, and the thing that I think anyone who's going through any sort of filmmaking process it needs the most is support. I could not have gone as far with this film as I have without the support of friends and family. I've been very fortunate enough to have people give tremendous amounts of feedback, and because I'm so close to this thing and I've been working with it for so long, that to be able to have just alone that level of support, like, and the support of the JFI now being a group of blank eyes to see the film, you know, freshly with, is tremendous. And that, but on an emotional level too, like with a film like as heavy as this, and it's been super stressful, and you can make a whole documentary about what's been going on during the editing of the film, and it'd be its own crazy thing. It's been entirely essential, and so I just that's what I think needs to happen, because like life is hard enough as is, and making a film is really hard, and having people to help lift you up and carry you through that process, and occasionally a dog, is very good too. So yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I think this is a good place to wrap up, and hopefully what we've done today has really created a larger community here of you all at home that are really interested to see how these projects will unfold. You can cheerlead them along. I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter at jfi.org. Visit our Filmmaker Residency page. Throughout the year, we hope to invite you to more events and possibly rough cut screenings of these projects as they veer through 2021. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in, and have a good night.